You are listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. Sustainable World Radio brings you in-depth interviews, news, and commentary about positive solutions to environmental challenges. Solutions that adhere to the permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, fair share. Are you interested in learning more about permaculture projects around the globe? How to plant a food forest? Restorative design or ethnobotany? Then stay tuned for Sustainable World Radio. I'm your host and producer, Jill Cloutier. My guest today is Louie Schwartzberg, director of the new film, Fantastic Fungi. Louie is an award-winning cinematographer, director, and producer. A visual artist who tells stories that celebrate life and reveal the hidden mysteries and wisdom of nature. Louie Schwartzberg is a true environmental advocate and voice for the natural world. Welcome to Sustainable World Radio, Louie. It's so good to speak with you today.
It's great to be with you too, Joe.
You know, Louie, I saw you at Pioneers many years ago, and I was struck not only by your gorgeous work, your film work, but also by the curiosity and wonder that you have for the natural world. And I also noticed your focus on the smaller, sometimes hidden, and maybe sometimes slower things like flowers, plants, pollinators, and now your film on fungi. And I'm curious what led you to this focus, and what are some of the things that you've discovered by highlighting flowers and the smaller things in life that sometimes people don't notice?
Well, it's the little things in life that make the world go round, number one. And I think it started in college when, after I graduated, I wanted to shoot 35 millimeter movie film. This is almost 40 years ago, before digital and video, actually. And 35 millimeter movie film, which is what, features are shot on, even still today, it was $100 a minute, and the cameras were a couple of $100,000. So I really couldn't afford to do that. So what I did was I retrofitted these really old cameras, animation cameras, that were built in the 1930s, and found a way to take them outdoors because they were used primarily to shoot like Disney cartoon animation. And what that did was it enabled me to, capture things that move either too small, too slow, too fast for the naked eye to see. For example, like time-lapse flowers or clouds metamorphosizing or sunrises. But it also really fed my sense of wonder, because being able to see things at a different time and scale than the narrow human vision, what that does is it broadens your worldview. It opens your heart and your mind to the fact that every life form on this planet has a different frame rate, a different metabolic rate. And that really feeds your curiosity and wonder. And I think curiosity and wonder is the intersection between art, science, and technology. And I've continued doing it now nonstop, 40 years straight in my studio. I've always had cameras running, filming time lapse of plants, flowers, and mushrooms.
It's so inspiring, and your work is so stunning, and I really encourage listeners to look you up online and watch some of your films. They're just gorgeous, totally gorgeous. And that was one of the things that really struck me about you. You've been filming flowers nonstop for 40 years. Can you share with listeners, and we're going to dive into fungi soon, I promise, but why flowers? And could you tell us just a couple of the things that you've learned from flowers?
Sure. Well, flowers, I think, seduced me with their color, their taste, their touch, their aroma. And flowers are the sexual organ of the plant. That's another reason why you can be seduced. But they really are critical for life on our planet. I mean, that's where fruits, nuts, vegetables comes from. People don't realize a flower, becomes the healthy food we need to eat. It's because we go to the grocery store and we buy it. We don't see a blossom on an orange tree turn into an orange, right? And it's really shocking how, I swear, most people don't know this basic fact of life. And so they've taught me that, especially in the relationship with the pollinators, that this is a really a mystical, magical, critical, environmental connection between the animal world and the plant world. If the plants don't have legs to find a mate, and so they can't move their DNA around the way most animals do. So what they've done is they've seduced these love messengers, bees, bats, hummingbirds, butterflies, and us to help them pollinate, to help them, spread their pollen in order to reproduce. So it's I call it a love story that feeds the earth. And that's why I've been so, entranced and immersed in this world, because it is the foundation of life on our planet. Plants are the only solar collectors, land-based solar collectors, that can turn light energy into food, fuel, shelter, and medicine. If we didn't have plants, we wouldn't have food. And if the plants didn't have the pollinators to help them reproduce, we wouldn't be here very long. So it's an important, environmental issue. I care about it a lot because it's a positive solution that we need to all be aware of, because we can all, plant pollinator-friendly plants in our garden. We can all, grow organic food. We can all stop using pesticides and GMOs. We can all plant a tomato in a pot on your balcony, even if you live in a city. These are all things we can do that enable us to create a sustainable, healthy planet for the future of our children.
Mm-hmm. And the plants have really done, they're really masters. And I love the way you put that they are solar collectors.
Yeah.
And they're entrancing and enchanting us to do their bidding.
Exactly. So like with the 40 years of shooting nonstop, I've squeezed all of that into 16 hours of film.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. And so really that brings in the idea of beauty as a way to wake people up, possibly, to making changes and helping to regenerate the planet.
I think that's one of the things, that I learned from flowers. I mean, they are beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
All women love to get flowers on Valentine's Day and on their anniversary.
And some guys too.
Yeah, so do guys. And so you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what is beauty? And I think what I've learned from all by nature filming is that beauty is nature's tool for survival because we protect what we love. And I'll say that again because it's really the core of what I do in my films, that beauty is nature's tool for survival because we protect what we love. We are hardwired to do that. It's nature's operating instructions. It manipulates us to do things like love your kids. All kids are cute. All kittens are cute. All puppies are cute. Why is that? Because when they're young, they need to be nurtured. You got to take care of them for life to go forward, right? And so we're hardwired to protect what we love. Beauty helps us in reproduction, creates attraction between the male and the female, sex in whatever species you're in, and it makes the world go round. And it's really an extraordinary thing to think about. I think that when people say beauty, they sort of just take it for granted. It's some kind of socio-cultural phenomena. But think about it on a much deeper level. I mean, there's beauty in the time-lapse flowers that I film, which is motion that the naked eye doesn't see. Why is that? There's beauty in the macro shots, like doing a close-up of the eye of a fly. Why is there beauty there when it's something that the naked eye can't see? I think it's an archetypical pattern that is throughout the universe.
Mm-hmm. Looking at some of the shots that you've gotten, or the filming you've done, it is amazing to go on that macro level, and the patterns are incredible. The natural patterns that are so prevalent in so many living creatures and landscapes.
Well, to me, it's like nature's intelligence being revealed. It's a language, instead of just like, being oversimplified and just saying, you're giving it a name, like, oh, that's a rose, or that's a daisy, or that's a beetle. It's kind of like, look at it for what it really is. What is that pattern saying to you? What is that rhythm pattern, color, texture. How does it speak to you? Because that is a language. It's a language that nature uses when they communicate with each other. So, we just tend to kind of gloss over the surface and go, well, we gave it a name. That doesn't mean we understand it or know it. So I think it's really interesting for us to kind of let go of that classification, intellectual exercise we do as knowing. Don't really know it until you really kind of like let go and allow yourself to be immersed in it emotionally.
And that's where the beauty can come in and entice us. I think that's what the flowers do. It's kind of the art of opening.
Yes.
What a beautiful field of work you found yourself in.
Well, it inspires me, and it's challenging to film it from a point of view that the human eye can't see, which again, as I said earlier, just opens your heart and your mind and your soul to the fact that there are realities beyond our perception. And that's just a great metaphor for life. I mean, your narrow view of life, the street you live on, the city you live on, the socioeconomic class you are a part of is a narrow point of view of life. That's why travel is great, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's great to see how other people live, think, eat, and feel. And that's what I'm trying to do with my film, Nature and People.
And I think your films do awaken that earthliness within people. It's kind of like, oh, that's so beautiful. And oh, I feel connected to this creature that I might not have been connected to otherwise.
We want to feel connected to it, and it's living in as we do now in the primarily city environments, and also now with digital display devices, we're getting further and further disconnected from the home we've always known, which has been living in nature. And I think that's why it creates an emotional response. So many people watching the films have always said they cried. And it's not because it's sad, it's because I think it touches a deep connection with their soul. It's like a homecoming. I haven't been there in such a long time, and it feels
Mm.
great to reconnect.
I think it's a feeling of relief almost. It's like, oh, yes, a reminder.
Yes,
We are part of the earth. And
yes,
and our influence and impact can be beneficial.
yeah. We are nature, so we have to be a part of it, reconnect, and be part of the solution of living in harmony with the planet.
Yes, and your new film, which I would love to chat about, is called Fantastic Fungi. And you have been highlighting, like we've been talking about the past few minutes, the smaller, more hidden parts of nature. And I'm curious, what inspired you to create a feature-length documentary about fungi?
Well, so the previous film I did, Wings of Life, was about flowers and pollinators, bees, bats, hummingbirds, and butterflies. And I told that story from the point of view of a flower, narrated by Meryl Streep. Um, it was a Disney Nature theatrical release, and I think it might still be on Netflix. And so when you do that deep dive and you go, well, wow, pollination is the foundation of life, because I said earlier, it gives us the fruit, nuts, seeds, vegetables that we need to live. If we live on a plant-based diet, that would certainly be the solution for climate change. And so, well, what do plants need? Well, we know they need sun, they need water, but they need soil. And where does soil come from? Well, it comes from the largest organism on the planet. It's everywhere. It can heal you, it can feed you, it can shift your consciousness. It's inside your body. And I discovered that it's fungi. Fungi can break down organic matter and rock to make soil. So 13 years ago, I heard Paul Stamets do one of his really, I think, first talks at Pioneers. And after he did his talk, I showed him some of my time-lapse mushrooms on my laptop. And that was the beginning of a bromance that has led to the finish of this movie, because he's like my lead mycologist in the film. And, understanding where soil comes from and understanding that there is this giant underground network, kind of like the internet, a giant wood wide web, that is a network that shares nutrients between trees and plants, mother trees and their kin, even, a shared economy under the ground that allows ecosystems to flourish. And that really blew my mind, you know? And I think we need to bring that model from below the ground above the ground. That could be the perfect model for our political and social systems. Imagine, a shared economy, not based on greed, so that everybody flourishes. What a wonderful way for us to live in harmony with the planet.
Wow, I know. And why do you think that the fungal kingdom has been hidden for so long? Because it really is almost an untapped field of study.
It's hidden because it's underground.
Except for the fruits, right? The fruit of the fungi, which we occasionally see.
Correct. The mushrooms are the fruit. So for people to understand this better, it's like they're the apple, and the tree is the mycelium network that is under the ground. And the mycelium network is just like these little white threads. If you're into gardening or
Hmm.
permaculture, I'm sure you've seen it. It's this little white fibery stuff. The cell wall is only one cell thick. Apparently, like in a cubic inch of soil, there's 300 miles of mycelium, which
Oh,
is extraordinary. Um, so it was also obviously a challenge for me to film it, but I love making the invisible visible. And so when we had to go beyond the microscope, we did some really amazing computer generated imagery based on scanning electron microscopy to show what this mycelium network looks like. It's a core idea in Avatar. James Cameron, admits that he got that idea from the scientists that are in my film. So it's a story that's never been told, and it's an amazing story. And it can, do so many things. We can do a deeper dive, but everything into helping with climate change, bioremediation, storing carbon under the ground, facilitating, making a community of trees into a forest, building community, sharing nutrients. It's the I just keep on asking the bigger question: what is the foundation of life? And I keep on going to, I guess, deeper and more underground in order to solve that question.
mm. And you might have, what's beneath the fungi? Did you go as low
Beneath the
as you could go?
fungi, beneath the fungi actually is another giant universe. Now we have to get into bacteria
Ah,
and,
yes.
and the world of bacteria and viruses, which is like a whole sci-fi scary movie that I'm not ready to go into
Yeah.
yet.
Well, we'll go back to fungi. So,
Yeah.
and you said they're the largest organism on the planet. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah, they found a patch in Oregon. It's over 2,000 acres, one organism. I'm sure people have heard about, the aspen trees that have a shared root system. A lot of people think they're the largest organism on the planet. But this mycelium network in Oregon is over 2,000 acres. And they've even found mycelium now under the sedimentary rock under the ocean. This is a discovery that's only about 2 or 3 months old.
Wow.
So it's on every continent. And let's also be aware that there's fungi in our gut, right? Without that, we wouldn't be able to break down food. They are symbiotic partners everywhere, in the leaf of every tree, inside of our bodies, inside of the earth, on every continent, everywhere. There's 6 times more species of fungi than there are of plants.
That's incredible.
And obviously, we haven't even begun to even identify all of them.
So, the mycelial network that's beneath our feet,
Yeah.
I know that's been a metaphor, or people have used that talking about the internet, like nature's
Yeah.
internet. Can you say a few words about that?
Yeah. Well, so the mycelial network um, touches the tips of the roots. So rather than if a tree needs to share nutrients with another tree or warn another tree that it's being attacked by, pests or pesticides or whatever, this is like a communication system. And so take, for example, let's talk about climate change for a moment. A CO2 molecule, carbon, dioxide goes into the pore of a leaf of a tree. The oxygen is released and the carbon travels, through the branch, down the trunk of the tree, into the root. And at the tip of the root, it connects with the mycelial network and trades that carbon for nutrients that it may need, like nitrogen, phosphorus, etc. So, and then what's great is it stores the carbon under the ground because carbon isn't a bad thing. Carbon is a building block of life. We're made up of carbon. The problem is we've taken the carbon that's been underground, stored organic, decomposed matter like coal and oil, and we've burned it and put it in the atmosphere. So, so that's the natural engine that can store carbon and sequester it back into the earth. And so that's what Mycelium Network does. It facilitates that community and builds communities of ecosystems so life can flourish.
So we could really foster and help regenerate or grow mycelium to become a large carbon sink, which it already is, but could we help that process along the way?
Definitely, we can help by doing a lot of things. For example, permaculture, which involves no-till agriculture, right? Don't break up that network by turning over the soil and chopping it up. Um, don't use pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they kill the mycelium. They're obviously not good for us either. Don't use fossil fuel fertilizers. What you're doing is you're breaking up that symbiotic relationship between the mycelium and the root structure of the plants and trees by giving them this temporary artificial partner. And then when that fertilizer is gone, so is the mycelium. So, you know, grow organic food or support your organic farmer. Let things rot in your garden. Don't rake up every leaf and have it be squeaky clean when all that debris needs to decompose and be recycled into the earth. Just a couple of things you can do to help, which are pretty easy to do.
Mm-hmm. And no herbicides as well, or fungicides.
Exactly.
Okay, so fungi seem very giving and cooperative. Um,
Yeah.
so they're helping plants, delivering nutrients to plants. They're sinking carbon. They're a carbon sink.
Hmm.
Did you are fungi as a whole pretty cooperative, or did you encounter any uncooperative or rebel fungi while
Well,
filming? I'm curious because plants compete. I'm wondering if fungi do as well.
yeah. Well, you know what? They're like edge runners. I mean, one of the things that they do, which is amazing, is that they put out enzymes to break things down. They have like an external stomach. They're like us. That our DNA is more closely related to fungi than to plants or any other kingdom because, in theory, we evolved from fungi. At some point, there were plants and fungi, and then fungi branched into animals. It's why, for example, that penicillin is such a powerful antibiotic, is because fungi is a mold, it's a fungi, and it helps fight viruses and kills bacteria that can be harmful. So what they're doing is it's like chemical warfare. They're putting out these enzymes that can either dissolve and break things down for it to eat, or it can also use those enzymes to kill something that is competitive or an enemy, that could eat it or that would destroy it, like viruses and bacteria. So that's why they're a giant benefit to us. Now, obviously, like all plants, there are some that are poisonous, some that can heal us, some that can feed us, and some that shift our consciousness. Obviously, we just have to be aware of what we eat, clearly. And that's why there's some people that are mycophobic because they've heard about poisonous mushrooms. But that's true about anything in nature. You can't walk around and eat any plant or any berry that you think looks good. You have to obviously know what you're doing. Um, I think that answered your question. I
Yes, it
forgot.
did. No, it was good. It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek question anyway, but it seems like they're so giving and so cooperative. And we talked about how they really help create soil, and we're dependent on plants. Plants need soil. We talked a bit about climate change, and there's many other viable solutions that fungi offer us for some of our most pressing challenges. And one is in earth repair. And
Right.
I think this is where fungi are change makers, where they can, I think it's mycoremediation. And I'd love
Yeah.
for you to talk about that and how they can actually clean up toxic spills and legacy pollutants and convert them into mushrooms.
So the mycelium can break down organic matter and anything that's organic, and that includes stuff like oil spills, right? So it can break down because they're the grand decomposers of nature. So whether it's oil or other toxic waste, the only way to like remediate the soil is to break them down into their component parts so they can be recycled. And what's amazing, as they break things down, my understanding is that even if you eat a mushroom that's been used for bioremediation, there is no toxic metals in the mushroom itself, which is pretty extraordinary. So they basically are the giant recyclers of nature. So as long as it's organic, it can break it down. Now, and there's been recent research that some fungi can actually break down plastic in a petri dish. What they've got to figure out is how to scale that. But that could be a giant solution with dealing with our problems with plastic. But any areas where there's been toxic waste, in the earth and soil, mushrooms and the Mycelium Network can remediate that in time.
Wow, that's really important at this point, and hopefully we will learn and stop creating these toxins. But we do have a lot of legacy pollutants, like I was saying, that are here, and that would be great to be able to clean up.
Absolutely.
And another thing too, so the fungi can clean up our external environment. They can also help clean up and heal our bodies. And I know that they've been used for thousands of years as really potent medicines. Can you talk a bit about this?
It's incredible. I mean, for example, mushrooms, especially in Chinese medicine and in Asia, have been used for thousands of years, and we're just beginning, I think, to kind of scratch the surface about that. For example, lion's mane is potentially a really powerful, supplement that can be used with memory loss, with helping neurons grow, with people with Alzheimer's. A lot of this deserves a lot more research, but that's one of the keys. I know you can get lion's mane. Paul Stamets sells it on his website, but you go to Whole Foods, you can buy lion's mane. Turkey tail is really an important mushroom for building up your immunity. And in the film, Paul at TEDMed has this really touching story how his mom had breast cancer, and she ended up taking 4 turkey tail pills in the morning and 4 at night, and she beat it, which is pretty incredible. And there are studies at NIH that say that turkey tail mushrooms, in conjunction with regular treatments, is a powerful, powerful additive that could help people with cancer. And of course, there's many other like reishi and chaga are really good for the heart. Again, I'm not a medical expert, but I've got a strong faith that mushrooms can remediate your body.
It's really exciting, and also water filtration. I don't know if you cover that in the film, but it can help clean up contaminated water.
Yes. Yeah, as a filter through the earth, like if there's a swallow where water, drains, they plant the mushroom mycelium, and as it goes through this bed of mushrooms down towards the stream, what was once a polluted environment is now been cleaned.
Wow, we live in an exciting time and terrifying at the same time
Yeah.
because I feel like it's a race. The race is on between the solutions and the destruction.
Yeah. I mean, Kenny at Bioneers has a great phrase, breakdown, breakthrough. We're living at a time when this fossil fuel economy is breaking down. It feels like our political systems are breaking down, but at the same time, we're having these incredible breakthroughs in technology, in areas of like bioremediation, solar, wind. There are all these solutions at our fingertips. Really, the question is like, why aren't we doing it? And really, what we need, I think, is a shift in behavior or a shift in consciousness. We've had these answers. I mean, we're coming up to the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which was the largest, protest of people coming out, in the streets that we've ever had on the planet. And why haven't we done anything? So
Why? Do you know? I mean, we know many
I
reasons,
mean,
but
there's a lot of factors. There's been a lot of certainly misinformation. There's a lot of resistance from the fossil fuel companies and economies that don't want change to happen because they want to continue to make money and make profit. And at the cost of destroying life on Earth. That doesn't make any sense because I think when you think about the fact that we kill all the people on the planet, it's got to be bad for business.
Yeah.
Uh, so, um, but I think also, and what I'm trying to do with my films is, going back to the idea of beauty. You know, well, you can't just tell people intellectually recycle and drive a fuel efficient car because it'll save the planet. I think what you have to do is get people to emotionally connect to nature, to love it, to fall in love with it, fall in love with your kids and their future, whatever it takes, so that you will make all the right choices with the food you eat, transportation, your home, everything you do should be a really conscious decision that says, I'm living in harmony with the planet.
And I think people are waking up, and I feel like no matter where we live on the planet, since you said there's mycelium even under the ocean floor, I think we in some way are engaging with fungi. Even if we live in the dry, are they in the desert as well, or is that one
Yes,
place? Oh, really?
yes,
Wow.
they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And again, it's like, yeah, it's not like the mycelium is like the answer to cure all our environmental ills. I think it's a wonderful metaphor and a model for how nature operates and how we need to live our lives. It opens up our consciousness and our awareness to nature's intelligence. So like you can take that journey through a flower, through a mushroom. You can take that journey through riding a wave. Being in the moment, being aware, being conscious.
Watching the gophers tear up your yard. No. It's like, wow, look how industrious that little creature is.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many ways to do that deep dive into understanding the rhythms and patterns of nature's intelligence. And I think once you've done that, then you're going to become a steward in order to protect it.
And speaking of stewardship, earth stewardship, are there any other solutions that you talk about in the film that fungi can offer us? I think we may have covered them.
I think we bioremediation, certainly climate change. If it heals our bodies, self-care is world care, and also the use of psilocybin now um, can help people become more loving and compassionate.
And this is fungi as actually a consciousness shifter or changer, I guess, right? Can you tell
Yeah.
us a bit about that?
Oh yeah. Well, I cover the studies that are being done in the hospitals, like Johns Hopkins, for example, where they're using it to treat people with PTSD, at NYU with end of life anxiety, from a severe diagnosis, for example. So the fact that you can feel the oneness if you have a spiritual transformational experience, with psilocybin, quote unquote, magic mushrooms. Studies have shown that people that have had that experience become less violent. They become more, it builds empathy. You feel this oneness. The reason why people lose their fear of dying is that once you feel that everything is connected, you don't have the fear of dying. You feel connected to everything, and um, it eliminates that fear, which is pretty remarkable.
That's very remarkable, and that would change how we live.
Exactly. And they have done even some studies to show that people that are incarcerated or in prison that have had a psychedelic experience have a much lower rate of recidivism, of returning back to prison. Studies have also shown that if you have a male partner that's had a psychedelic experience, a much lower rate of domestic violence. Um, so next time you go on a date and ask your partner if he's ever tripped on mushrooms as a way to kind of make sure that you're filtering out you're with the right guy.
That's so great. So, so you know so much about fungi, and I'm just curious if there's anything that was surprising that you learned while filming Fantastic Fungi.
Yeah, I think the greatest surprise for me was this idea of the shared economy under the ground,
Hmm.
the idea that communities, survive better than individuals. I didn't think that was going to be my big aha moment and sort of like the closing statement of the movie. But that is something that is a giant truth. We can talk about how, sunlight's important and water is important for life on our planet. Soil is important. The flowers, bees, bats, butterflies, pollinators, all of these things are really important, right? But what's most important is the fact that it's interdependent. They all need each other, right? Water alone doesn't create life.
So it's that connection.
It's the interconnection of all of these. Their interdependency is what makes life work. And that's what the Mycelium Network does. It connects plants and trees to one another and helps stores the carbon for life to recycle. It is the most. Again, I keep on looking, doing that deep dive into the mystery. Interconnection could be the ultimate.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's what I think we need to see and hear and see modeled at this time.
Yeah, which is why I'm doing these screenings like we're doing in Santa Barbara. And if you don't live in Santa Barbara, you can go to fantasticfungi.com and look for a screening in your area. But what we're doing live events primarily because we want to model the Mycelium Network. We want people to come together and experience the film and have a conversation face to face. You know, permacultures, gardeners, doctors, scientists, artists, entrepreneurs. We all need to connect. We all need to share ideas and see how we can all live together in a more harmonious way to protect our environment. And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing these live events, because if people saw it alone on a streaming platform, that would defeat the purpose of what I believe the Mycelium wants me to do. It wants me to connect people to each other. And again, the giant takeaway for me in the movie was interconnection. If you said you can make a film about mushrooms, why would what do you hope to learn? The last thing I would have said at the beginning was interconnection, interdependency. That would not have been, the first thing I would have thought of.
Well, that's exciting too that you went in thinking something else and then the fungi said, "No, wait a minute." There's this whole other aspect of
Well,
us that we want you to highlight.
and also, this thing called love. You know, uh, the mother tree takes care of its baby trees. It feeds nutrients to its babies in order for them to grow up. It's the fact that love isn't just isolated to the human species. I mean, if plants can do that, love must be almost everywhere.
I think if you tune in to what's going on in the natural world, you see examples of love.
Yes. And then another thing I just want to add too, speaking of love and
Hmm.
speaking to you, and he seems so in tune with it, is that a lot of the nature films have been telling, I think, really a very narrow story and perhaps even a false narrative. Survival of the fittest, you know. Um,
Gazelles being attacked nonstop. I
yeah,
can't stand
predator versus prey, this macho story of kill or be killed, when the real story of nature is the feminines, symbiosis, regeneration, rebirth, networks, relationships, connection, partnerships. That is the true story of nature. And I think, you know, what's been seen a lot on like, Discovery or these channels, Shark Week is still like their number one rated, you know, event because they're pushing the fear button, which is, that primal fear, which is so destructive, I think, in terms of our understanding of the natural world. These microscopic interconnections of pollination and fungi, they don't scream conflict. They scream cooperation. And what is it that we need at this critical juncture in our facing these giant environmental issues that's going to save our butts, literally. It's going to be cooperation,
So, time
right?
for a different story, time to tell the other story.
Exactly. We need cooperation. We need connection. We need to work together.
That's so important, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
I know. It's hard, but I feel like it's that fine line between because I spent my early 20s kind of in the new agey thing. Then I kind of switched like permaculture, earth repair, earth, and now I feel like there has to be a blending where
Yeah.
you're grounded on the planet, at least for me, where I'm grounded on the planet but also open. Does
Well,
that make sense?
yeah. Well, here's the thing. I mean, when I say it's all connected and I want people to feel that, that is not a new agey statement, because the scientists in my film talk about it and have evidence that it's true. I mean, when the mother tree, takes care of its baby, it's because they've put in a radioactive isotope into that tree and they've tracked how it can move underground through the mycelial network into the baby seedling that is trying to grow 50 yards away. So there's evidence of that. It is true that it's connected.
Well, is the mother tree? So, can you explain? And I know we're getting very close to the end of our time, but can you
Yeah,
just briefly explain what the idea of that? And this is in the film as well.
it is in the film.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, what Suzanne Samar did, again, a female scientist who had a lot of male scientists probably say, "Oh, I don't believe that. You're probably new agey and all that."
Right.
What she did was she put radioisotopes, which means you can track it, into a tree, and you could track the radioisotope traveling underground through the mycelial network and ending up in a baby tree 50 yards away. So they are able to transfer nutrients to each other. They're able to communicate to each other. They're able to nurture each other. That to me is remarkable and gives evidence and credence to the fact that it is all connected and love is everywhere.
And that's the other story, which your work is really bringing to light. You're competing against Shark Week. It's great.
Yes, yes.
You need Fungal Week.
Even Darwin, when they say survival of the fittest, that's not what Darwin's work was all about. The majority of his work was all about botany, and botany is all about cooperative relationships. This idea of survival of the fittest was actually adopted by political operatives in the 20s and 30s to justify imperialism, invading third world countries, and saying that the white man was superior to people of color.
Hmm. Hmm. So it's yeah, time for the new shift into our
Yes.
different story.
Uh,
We've run this one to the end.
We've run it to the end and potentially to our own demise.
Hmm.
Survival of the fittest is not the story of nature. It, the story of nature is cooperation and love.
Well, I'm so thrilled that we got to talk today because I think so many of my listeners and myself, we need to hear this.
Thank you for sharing the spores of wisdom.
And we'll get to see it too.
Yes,
And so, one thing I noticed too was that if you go to fantasticfungi.com, there's a new book that's coming out. I don't know if it's out
yes,
yet. I
yes.
think on the website you can find out about the book and also the gatherings that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so we have a companion book called Fantastic Fungi, and it's edited by Paul Stamets, but we have all the leading experts in the movie: Michael Pollan, Eugenia Bone, Andy Weil, and we cover everything from permaculture, bioremediation to psychedelics. And it's wonderful because all these essays are like only 3 or 4 or 5 pages. A lot of really gorgeous photography of mushrooms that'll just blow your mind, and I highly recommend people buy the book. You can either go to Amazon.com or Google it. I'm sure you'll find it. And also on the website, we have something called ACT, and it's an opportunity to, maybe get involved and take action. And we have these pillars that talk about environmental, biodiversity, solutions, um, sustainability, permaculture, gardeners, just bringing all these great groups together, foraging, culinary, food. It's really great to build, bigger community. We also have something called the mushroom. And the mushroom is like a screening room where you go get mushed. And we have lots of little shorts that did not end up in the movie that I'm sharing with people as well. And there's also an opportunity to leave a review. How did how did it make you feel? To leave comments and share it with other people.
Well, that is exciting. So that's fantasticfungi.com. And then if people want to learn more about you and your work in general, they can go to movingart.com.
Yes, and I also have a series on Netflix now called Moving Art. It's in its third season. There's 20 episodes, and it's just gorgeous, nature ecosystems with music and no narration, so you can go on your own personal journey.
That's so great. You really, truly are a voice for the voiceless, the plants and animals and fungi.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that there's a responsibility and an obligation to speak for those that can't speak. And I want to stand up for the little guys,
Yeah.
especially the pollinators, right?
Yes, yes.
And I think what the mushrooms are trying to say to us is wake up, you know, let's get our act together. Let's live in harmony with the planet. Let's not have more species die because it's not good. It's not good for us, and it's certainly not good for them either. But they will survive. They will survive if we go extinct. And I think that's a warning call for us to wake up and make sure that that does not happen.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for sharing this time with us today. And is there anything else that I didn't ask that you'd want to share with listeners?
I think you did a great job, Jill, covering it all.
Oh, good. And I can't wait to see your film.
It's going to blow your mind in
Yeah.
a good way.
In a good
Yeah,
way.
yeah. I'll say, we had a review. I think it was from the New York Times or Forbes, but anyways, no, it was Roger Ebert, but it said it was mind blowing, soul cleansing, and entertaining. And I would say that having your mind blown is a medicinal. So I hope you enjoyed the experience.
That's great. Well, thank you so, so much.
Yeah. Okay. Take care.
You've been listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. You can find us online at sustainableworldradio.com and also on iTunes. For more information about permaculture and ecology, visit the Sustainable World Media YouTube channel, where you'll find videos about permaculture, aquaponics, organic gardening, rainwater harvesting, and much, much more. Sustainable World Radio is a listener-supported program. If you like what we do, please consider making a donation to the show. I'm your host and producer, Jill Cloutier, and thank you so much for listening.